Hi, my name is James Wu. I am the CEO and co-founder of InnerSpace. My role at InnerSpace is really around setting the strategic direction of the company and spending as much time as possible with our customers to understand the challenges they're facing and how we can help solve them. With me is my longtime friend and co-founder, Matt Mcillvary. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Matt Mcillvary. I'm the VP of Research and Development at InnerSpace, and I deliver product. I make the magic happen behind the scenes. I'm responsible for all the architecture and infrastructure that our customers need to make everything work.
So Matt and I are here tonight to discuss space utilization data, how you collect it and why it's valuable and what shifts and changes we've seen over the years of doing this. And hopefully we're going to be able to shed some light on why this is relevant, why it's important, why it's incredibly valuable to your business, and how you might get started in using it.
So when we started this company, we focused on mapping and sensors. And it turns out over time, that is not what people are looking for.
Well, yeah, I think like any company, we started with this hypothesis, and we kind of thought that sensors were going to be required in order to be able to solve these two key problems that we saw at the time in the built space. One, how do you keep track of, the physical aspects of a building? So our solution was, well, we'll have a sensor that can create these maps on demand and update it. The second was, well, how do you layer in relevant data about how people are using it? Well, that was the other part of the sensors that we were building, and we selected Wi-Fi as a technology, which we'll talk about more. The irony is we invested all of this time and research into building these sensors, and here we are today, a completely sensor-free, delivering our capabilities without any sensors whatsoever.
So we spent a lot of time building sensors, collecting Wi-Fi data to triangulate people and understand user behavior in spaces, which set us up for realizing that we don't need sensors. We can do this with existing Wi-Fi infrastructure, which makes this whole transition, the whole deployment process, much simpler.
I mean, sensors were as painful for us to have to build and manage and install as they were for our customers to have to procure and allow us to install and configure and all that kind of stuff. The hard work that we put into building those things and figuring out how to make them work just naturally translated, once we realized we had the capability of using the existing infrastructure, naturally translated into our ability to use it better than it's been able to be used before.
Right, and the drawback with sensors is, there's lots of privacy concerns around sensors, there's flexibility problems with sensors, there's cost problems with sensors.
There's maintenance problems with sensors.
All of these disappear with hardwareless. I mean, we knew there was accuracy issues with Wi-Fi. Historically, people would use triangulation and other types of algorithms that were just not suited for the indoor environment. And we found another way. We figured out a way to make Wi-Fi positioning work on any infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And we figured out a way to increase accuracy without requiring more hardware.
Right.
Which makes it work in any space with any existing installation.
So we figured out ways to overcome some of the challenges of the traditional approach of trilateration. So right. With Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi signals bounce off walls and they get absorbed by bags of water, and all of this makes them horribly inaccurate, but I mean inconsistent, I guess, right? Sure. So you get peaks and valleys of what the signal strength look like, and those peaks and valleys translate into inaccurate location data. The approach that Matt and the team came up with mitigates all of that variability, which mitigates all of the inaccuracy.
Yeah, we mitigated all the inaccuracies dealing with the bag of water problem, which is people have phones in their pockets. They have them in their backpacks. They have them out in front of them. With traditional approaches, you get different results every time. With our approach, it's the same result every time. The same location. The accuracy is much better.
So we're hitting sub 2 meter accuracy with 90+% consistency. One thing that we probably should explain is, why do we care about phones?
Right. Why do we care about phones? Because people carry phones. Everybody, in our experience, 95% or more people carry a phone in an office space. So that's how we use that as a proxy for people.
And if they're not carrying phones, they've got a smartwatch, they've got a
a laptop.
They've got a tablet. And a question we often are getting asked then, well, if people are carrying multiple devices around, how are we, especially if we're using these devices as a proxy for a human being, how are we accounting for the fact that some people have many and some people have none? How did the team solve that?
Yeah, so we have algorithms that bring those people together, right? It takes a little bit of time. The system trains and learns the behaviors of different people in different devices and brings them into a single person.
So what we look at is this probability that these two devices that we see at the beginning, we can't tell that whether they're independent or linked, but over time, the behavior of these devices kind of converge, and the probability that they are being carried by separate people goes to zero. So what we're seeing in the industry is a shift in people's understanding and people's appetite for space utilization data. When we first started looking at this market, and even up until say 12 months ago, there were the market seemed obsessed with two things: sensors and occupancy data, counting people in spaces. And a really interesting shift that we've been witnessing over the past little while is that sort of enlightening moment of realizing, sensors aren't the only solution forward. They are certainly they are certainly an important part of a comprehensive solution, but they aren't the only way forward. And two, that occupancy data, that simple people counting metric, isn't enough to make some of the decisions they're trying to make in real estate. So when they're trying to understand not just whether or not a space is being used, but they're trying to understand what kinds of spaces are being used by whom and how often and with what level of intensity, simple counting metrics alone isn't sufficient. And that's why people are starting to come to us more often.
And I would add to that, not only is that an issue, but the privacy concerns are an issue. The flexibility as you're expanding and contracting your office space, you don't want to do another install. You want to just keep measuring. And cost. Cost is a huge issue with a lot of our customers. Oh,
and inevitable obsolescence.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Being able to use an existing Wi-Fi infrastructure for most of our customers that's an infrastructure they have to have. They need to have it anyway, and they're going to update it over the years, and it's just table stakes. But a bespoke sensor infrastructure is something that is an additional infrastructure that needs to be maintained, and it's an additional cost, not just up front, but over the years, whether it's updating the sensors as they break, or even replacing batteries. At a certain scale, replacing batteries can be a full-time job.
And not only that, but the Wi-Fi infrastructure, it could be a blended infrastructure. It could use a bunch of different Wi-Fi hardware, and it still works. The table stakes are the counts, the people counts, which every customer looks for initially, and then we show them more, which are the flows, right? Understanding how people flow through a space. What is the user behavior? And then we add on different groups or personas, and then you can actually start slicing and dicing the data in different ways to understand how do the early birds use the office? How do the Nighthawks use the office? How does the engineering team use the office? It really, really helps enlighten the customer.
I think the shift has been in recognizing that the employee base isn't this monolithic and uniform group of people that are all behaving and all have the same needs out of the office. Particularly when we think about RTO policies, when our customers are thinking about RTO policies, they're not just thinking about a count of days that people have to be in the office. They're trying to figure out who needs to be in the office and which teams can be fully remote, which teams are most effective in the office all the time, and what's the right blend of in between where people are coming 2 or 3 times a week. And when they come 2 or 3 times a week, what are the resources in that model that they need? Do we need as many open neighborhoods as we used to have? Do we need more of the collaboration spaces? These are all the questions that people are asking us about. And one of the unique things that we're able to do for them is provide that team-based granularity into the answers we have.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the resources that people use, right? Does the engineering team need a meeting room, a scrum area, whatever, right? That may be different than what the marketing team uses. So you can actually tailor the space to match the team.
Yep. And also when you have this ability to understand movement at a team level and attribute movement to an anonymized group, we can solve problems that we can help solve problems or help identify solutions to problems that occupancy counts alone can't do. So as an example, we had a customer recently who was trying to identify what the problem was with some resource availability in some neighborhood, right? Wherein the team that was there, they had a meeting space next, assigned to their neighborhood, but they were finding it was never available. And they were looking at the occupancy counts and seeing like, okay, well, it's a little bit underutilized. It's an 8-person room. There's 4 people in it. But when they looked at our flow data and they looked at our team attribution data, what they actually realized was that the people who were using those spaces weren't even resident in this neighborhood at all, right? So the problem wasn't in this neighborhood. The problem actually that they had to solve was in the neighborhood, down the hall and to the right, where these folks who were using this particular meeting space had come from. So it turns out that neighborhood had the problem, and our data was able to help point them in the right direction rather than have them barking up the wrong tree.
I mean, the one thing is the installation process. Like, there is no installation. You just turn it on, and that's it, right? And you can change the zones, or you can change the spaces that you're monitoring in any way that you want.
So I guess it's the unique thing about being sensor-free is that we can be as simple as a configuration. Now,
Sure.
Obviously, we know with every large organization, there's InfoSec, there's all of these processes that have to be followed before you can get to the point of just being turned on. But once you're there, we can literally be turned on and people are collecting data right away.
And that you can change it, right? Like the
Right.
fact that we can actually change the areas that we're monitoring
Right.
without reinstalling a sensor is huge. Or you can actually have many layers,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, the goal of the data is to help you understand the space and help you affect change within that space. And the added benefit of being a fully software-based solution is that as you make changes, your platform can keep up with those physical changes simply by updating the software. You don't then have this whole other project of having to reconfigure the sensors or move them or recable them. You touched on it before, how sensors are not as private. Well, how are we private? What do we do? Not only what do we do from a technical perspective, we don't want to be tracking individuals. We don't want to know how that somebody spent 15 minutes in the bathroom, right? And we certainly don't want to be responsible for servicing that in any way, right? So we go that extra mile of anonymizing by aggregating data and make sure individual signals are never seen.
So privacy is maintained at InnerSpace at 2 levels. The first one is anonymizing the MAC addresses that come in. So as soon as it touches our system or reaches our system, MAC addresses are removed.
And what's relevant about a MAC address, just in case people don't know?
A MAC address is a number that maps back to a person's device. But that's all it is, right?
But it's considered personally identifiable, and that's why it's
considered personally identifiable by GDPR, so we remove it, right? We anonymize it. And then that's when we process that data after that. The second layer of privacy that we deal with is only reporting on aggregate information. And the classic example is the CEO problem. If you're monitoring the CEO's office, eventually you'd be able to figure out who the CEO is, right? When somebody shows up in the office, in the CEO's office, it's likely to be the CEO. So we only deliver data in aggregate to avoid those types of problems.
And that's not something we need to do. That's something we chose to do. People ask us all the time, like, hey, could you help us, help our employees find each other? And like, we could, and we'd have to go through this whole process of having opt-in and permission-based, opt-in from all of the employees. But by default, well, that's not really where we want to be. We want to be as protective. We want to sort of stand up for protecting people's privacy and do it in a way that we know we can present the valuable data the business needs without revealing any of the sort of the sensitive private stuff and sensitive stuff that people want to keep to themselves. Space utilization data isn't just about looking at numbers and graphs and charts, right? That tends to be where it starts, and we've got, what Intella, which is our app for. It's kind of like the training wheels for wading into this platform, but ultimately, we know when we built it, we knew that Intella wasn't, large organizations, large enterprises who have tens of thousands of employees aren't using Intella as their business intelligence tool. We need to support integration so that they can put that data where it can affect the most change and have the most value.
The other thing we do is I mean, apart from being able to export our data in real time to other systems if needed, we also ingest data from other systems as needed. More data makes the system better. While Wi-Fi is our base, is our table stakes, ingesting data from other sensors or badge counts or any sort of data feed just makes the system better.
Yep. And it's actually, it's kind of a full circle, right? So we can pull data in from the access control system to help it better inform our occupancy counts and provide more accuracy or more precision to our occupancy counts. Mm-hmm. We can then feed that processed space utilization data back into our customers' building management system or their IWMS system, or we can help drive real-time experiences like signage that can help employees make smarter choices about how they intend to use space. A great example is, signage that some of our customers use to help their employees understand when's a good time to go to the cafe for lunch. It helps improve the utilization of the space because you're not getting everybody just showing up at noon, but it also helps productivity because you don't have your employees sitting in line for half an hour when they could, go and finish that other half-hour meeting, come back later, and they're through lineup in 5 minutes. An interesting trend that we've been noticing, probably only for the past few months, it's probably been around longer, but it's really only come on our radar in the past few months, has been, we've been focused on the corporate office space for so long and trying to help corporate real estate teams improve their space utilization, improve their understanding of how their spaces are used so they can provide a better workplace experience. But it turns out a very, very similar set of problems exists in the higher education space at colleges and universities, where they're trying to figure out their 5 and 10 year campus plan. They're trying to figure out where are they going to invest 5, 10 years down the road in the facilities that the students are going to need then. And in order to make those informed decisions, they want to understand how are the facilities they've got today being used differentially by the students they have today. And what works really well is that, a lot of these campuses, they're maintaining this campus plan, and also in maintaining that campus plan, they actually get funding to support some of the work they want to do. So in this space we're offering value to this customer, and by accepting that value, they're actually getting funding that can help offset the cost of that value.
And universities are interesting. They fit really well with us because Wi-Fi infrastructure exists everywhere. So scaling across many different buildings and many different floors across a campus is really easy for us, frankly, because you just need to turn it on and we can process that data for them.
Well, it's also the sheer scale, right? I mean, at the company, everybody in the company, the whole team gets super excited if we talk to a new prospect that says, hey, we've got 7 million square feet of office space, right? And the 7 million square feet of office, that's a big project, and everyone gets super excited about it. And then we talk to some small university in the US that we've never, as Canadians, we've never heard of, and they're operating 15 million square feet of space. And then you talk to a university or a college that, is a name brand, is a household name, even outside of the US to Canadians, and they're operating 25, 30 million square feet of space. And that's a scale at which very, very few enterprises operate.
Yeah, there's even in some examples, the stadiums in the U.S. are a good example. I mean, they have 50,000, 100,000 people in them.
Yeah.
Which is literally impossible for a sensor company to cover. But Wi-Fi is totally doable.
Yeah. It's as Canadians, it's kind of mind-boggling. Like the scale of some of that stuff is crazy. And we're fortunate and I guess just happy to be where we are. Thank you for spending the time to listen to Matt and I kind of go back and forth on this. Our goal was really to try and demystify a lot of some really complex technology and a lot of buzzwords, in fact, that are being tossed around that you've probably heard a lot about of late. I'm hopeful we were successful. Sometimes we're a whole lot less clear in our conversations than we might like to be. But if it's still not clear, we'd be happy to try again in person. So please reach out and let us know if you do have any further questions about what we're doing, how we've done it differently than what's been done before. and we'd love to see if we can help you out with capturing a better understanding of your space and hopefully make a better workplace for your employees.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.